Hello there, I am Jamain Hatton, and I have decided to start a series of presentations with you that deals with the CXC English B poems that are in the syllabus 2018 to 2023. So, today we're going to look at the poem This is a Dark Time, My Love by Martin Carter. Beautiful, beautiful poem. Hopefully, you'll get a chance to understand the poem more. Hopefully, we can get to learn from each other. And hopefully, as you prepare for your exam, this will be very important to you. So, we'll get straight into that. So, we have the poem This is a Dark Time, My Love by Martin Carter. We'll go through the poem together and then we'll have a discussion on it following that. So, this is a dark time, my love. All around the land, brown beetles crawl about. The shining sun is hidden in the sky. Red flowers bend their heads in awful sorrow. This is a dark time, my love. It is a season of oppression, dark metal, and tears. It is a festival of guns, the carnival of misery. Everywhere, the faces of men are strained and anxious. Who comes walking in a dark night time? Whose boot of steel tramps down the slender grass? It is the man of death, my love, the strange invader watching you sleep and aiming at your dream. Beautiful, beautiful poem by Martin. For persons who have studied Caribbean history and for persons who are Guyanese, you would know that Guyana gained independence in year 1966. But Guyana was to gain independence much earlier than that. But because the British probably realized that, you know what? We're not ready to let Guyana go as yet. So what did they do? They sent their soldiers back into the country to take control, to suspend the constitution, and to regain power and control of Guyana. So this happened in 1953, and Martin Carter was actually one of the freedom fighters. I want to use the word freedom fighters loosely. Martin Carter was one of the advocates for independence, and actually he was incarcerated, he was locked up for his role in fighting for independence, and he wrote this poem from a jail cell, and he was talking to his love, he was talking to his wife, who probably was in a foreign land. So when you hear my love, he's referring to her there. So it says, this is a dark time, my love. It's telling us how deep, how dark, how sad the moment was. And it paints the picture that all around the land, I'll turn off my phone. All around the land, these brown beetles crawl about. Now, the brown beetles is a wonderful description there to tell us that the soldiers were everywhere. And it's amazing that Carter used brown beetles. He didn't say flies or he didn't say soldiers. He compared the soldiers metaphorically to beetles. Beetles. I know girls particularly would say ew when they hear beetles or see beetles. And imagine that. He's comparing them to beetles. That tells us how deeply he was, how deeply he felt about these soldiers, how much he hated them. So brown beetles crawl about. Shocking. He says what? The shining sun is hidden in the sky. Now, let's for a second here think of the sun as something that's bright and beautiful. And we were talking about the independence. We were talking about Guyana wanting independence. So their dream was to be an independent nation. Their dream was to have their own flag. Their dream was to have their own motto. Their dream was to rule themselves. And the shining sun, that's the dream that they're talking about, is now hidden. They cannot see the hope of being independent. They cannot see themselves as having their own motto. They cannot see themselves as being their own nation. And that is what the picture Carter is trying to paint for us. He's saying that this situation was so dear, this situation was so sad that even flowers, even nature felt the kind of sadness, even nature felt the kind of darkness that had taken the country. So he says, red flowers bend their heads in awful sorrow. That there, red flowers bend their head. That's an example of personification. You know that flowers, of course, cannot bend their head, so they're giving the quality of a human to a non-human. So the example there is personification. We look at that a little bit more just now. It says, this is a dark time, my love, repeating that line. So that's an example of repetition, trying to show you how serious of a time it was. And it says, it is a season of oppression. So you know in Guyana, if you're Guyanese or if you're in the Caribbean, you would know that in your country there are different seasons. So Carter is saying it is a season of oppression. In Guyana, there mango season, there guava season, there is what else? Downs season, guinep season. But he's not talking about these seasons of fruits. He's actually talking about a series of oppression. Can you imagine that? The season of pain, the season of dark time. He says dark metals and tears. The season of guns, the season of crying, the season of sadness, trying to paint the picture of how serious the situation was. Beautiful description by Martin, to say the least. The festival of guns. So you know in Guyana we talk about Pagua, the festival of colors. We talk about Diwali, the festival of light. We talk about Christmas, the birth of Jesus, all of those festivals. And here Carter is comparing not those happy times, but he's oxymoronically comparing festivals to sadness, guns. So you'll talk about oxymoron a little later on, but just have an idea of what he's saying there. Another oxymoron, carnival of misery. In Guyana we have Mashramani, and Carter is not talking about Mashramani, but he's talking about the carnival of misery. Can you imagine that? He's putting those two words so close together. Carnival that's supposed to be a happy time, and misery that is obviously a sad time. He says what? Everywhere the faces of men are strained and anxious. It's raining here in Guyana on the 20th of May. I do hope the recording is not distorted too much. Yeah, he says what? Everywhere the faces of men are strained and anxious. Who comes walking in a dark night time? Everywhere the faces of men are strained and anxious. Let's look at that line. Imagine you are about to be free. You're about, when I say free, I don't mean slavery free, but I mean free as in being your independent nation or being your own boss. You're about to have your own motto. You're about to have your own flag. And suddenly, it happens so quickly, so unexpectedly, that the country was filled with these persons who were not welcome, these brown beetles. And then you were on shore and nervous about what the future held for you, strained and anxious. Carter goes on to ask rather, who comes walking in the dark night time? That rhetorical question there is to show us how unsure Carter was of what was going on. Whose boot of steel tramps down the slender grass? Let's metaphorically take that slender grass to mean growth or success or thriving. And he's saying that the steel boot is tramping down slender grass. The steel boot is damaging hopes and dreams of being independent, hopes and dreams of being a free nation, hope and dreams of being your own boss. And he's going to answer that question now and tell us, is a man of death my love? He's talking again to his wife. He's describing to her what is going on. And he's saying, the strange invader, the stranger. That should be the strange invader. The strange invader watching you sleep and aiming at your dream. That goes to show us how deeply Martin Carter felt about what was going on. So he says this strange invader. The word strange tells us that we are not really sure. Who are you? Where did you come from? All of a sudden, that those questions come out when we look at the word strange. Let's go to that last line. It's a beautiful last line because it says, watching you sleep and aiming at your dream. If you picture someone sleeping, you would picture someone who is helpless. You would picture someone who is motionless, who's not doing anything for themselves. So there, I think he would want to paint the picture that Guyana was there lying, sleeping, and suddenly this person came and aimed a gun at their dreams. The dream of being an independent nation. A frightening image because imagine if you are sleeping and someone is aiming a gun to your head and they're trying to destroy your future. How dear that would be. And this is what Carter is saying. He's saying that the country is about to be destroyed by someone who's strange, someone who's not known, someone who is taking advantage of the fact that we are young or we're motionless, or that the fact that the Guyanese people at the time were not able to do much for themselves, supposedly, and destroying the hope of being an independent nation. So that was This Is a Dark Time, My Love by Martin Carter. We will now look at some devices in the poem. So one device mentioned in the poem, like I started by saying, personification. Red flowers bend their heads in awful sorrow. So red flowers, well, flowers bend. Of course, they don't have heads to begin with, because it's not a human, and they're giving the quality of that human being to non-human. And it's important to say non-human and not non-living, because that's what personification is about, giving human qualities to non-human. And it's giving you the idea that how deep the situation was in Guyana at that time, that even nature felt what was going on. Oxymoron, Festival of Guns, Carnival of Misery. It shows you how he is not comparing, but how he is saying that it wasn't a happy time, it wasn't a festival, it wasn't a jubilant time, but it was a time of sadness, a time of hardship, a time of misery with the people. We have other devices, we have some examples of metaphor, we have rhetorical question, who comes walking in a dark night time. Of course, you have the repetition of this is a dark time, my love, all of which I'm quite sure your teacher would have explained to you nicely. And anything else your teacher might have taught that is a device, you go ahead and use that in your exam. So how can we compare this poem? When we're comparing poems, we're looking at similarities in these poems, and we can also look at the differences in the poems, and we're comparing it on a common theme. One of the themes that is evident in This Is a Dark Time, My Love is war. There's also some amount of love. There is desire, there is hope, there is dream of being independent, the hope of being independent, the desire or the want of independence, and so on. So this, you can use this and anything else your teacher might have taught you. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. I hope you have enjoyed this and I hope you have learned from this. Be sure to hit me up like this, comment, suggest future poems that you wish for me to review, subscribe so you can get that update on those future poems, share this, ensure you help your colleagues also to pass the exams. Good luck and best wishes in your exams.